Welcome back, everyone. We are live for another episode of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panel. Today is actually our 3-year anniversary of the show. We missed an episode or two, but we also had a few weeks where we did 2 shows. And this is actually the official 3 years to the day that we had the first episode. So just want to say welcome back to all of our great listeners and to our first panelist, Spartan Grown. Welcome, Spartan.
What's up, everybody? Thanks, Jack. Thanks, everybody. Welcome, chat. I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces. Or you can also, if you don't do Instagram, you can shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com. I'm a organic grower at home and a synthetic grower at work here in Michigan, commercial grower. Man, my brain's not working. I'm on edibles right now, so.
I'm on edibles.
That's a good way to celebrate 3 years. Well, I'll say next up, we got Dr. MJ.
Hey, Grower Love Jack and everybody. I'm happy to be back again on our 3-year anniversary. It's like a long time. So yay us. And thanks to the audience for sticking with us and showing up every week when we do this show. So yeah, I'm excited for another cool show.
It's funny that when you said that, I thought I have been doing this longer than some of my new family members have been alive for, and they're over like a year plus now. And it's like, wow, it's funny to actually think that. But we've been doing this pretty dang consistently, and I'm happy to keep coming back and doing it. Next up, Brandon Rust.
What's going on, guys? Brandon Rust here. If you're not familiar with my work, you can find me on Instagram at rust.brandon. And you can also find a link in my bio to my company, Bokashi Earthworks, which is exponentially increasing. We are growing. We've got some growing pains we're going through right now, but it's all getting situated. Got a lot of cool stuff coming up. So keep your eyes peeled. And so I posted that I have a seed drop, very limited seed drop coming up. And it's going to be dropping tomorrow at 4:20, but I didn't say whether that was AM or PM. So be aware.
Well, welcome back, Brandon. I actually reposted that on my story because so many people ask me about your seeds. I'm like, don't complain to me if you missed the drop. Here it is, 2 days in advance. We gave you notice. So definitely check out Brandon's page and be sure you follow that. Next up, we've got Matthew Gates.
Hey everyone, this is Matthew Gates. I am an IPM specialist, that stands for Integrated Pest Management. I'm a writer at Skunk Magazine. I have a YouTube channel, Zenthanol, where I talk about plant health and various aspects about usually insects and mites and biocontrols and that sort of a thing. So if you're interested in that, and of course pests as well, you can check me out there, Zenthanol, on YouTube, as well as on Instagram at SyncAngel, and also on Twitter.
Always happy to have you back. Next up, we've got Kyle.
Hey everybody, my name is Kyle Breeder. 3 years is a long time, you guys. It seems like maybe like 4 months ago we just started doing this, but it's been way longer than that. So I specialize in feminized seeds, and I'm slowly but surely creeping into the autoflower world. I do have some new autoflower seeds on my website with a collaboration with Gnome Automatics. So if you're looking for autoflower seeds, they're on there. The photo periods are slim pickings, but I do have a brand new drop coming in like 7 weeks of some really good stuff that I haven't ever released before. I'm also doing a collaboration with Brandon. So anybody who's looking out for that, I'm about to basically I'll have all my females ready for pollination probably in like 2 or 3 weeks from today. And Brandon hooked me up with some good stuff pollen wise. So we're going to be getting involved in that. So that's cool. And if anyone's looking for me, pure_breeding on Instagram, pure breeding on Facebook. And I have a website, which is purebreeding.com. And happy to be here, you guys. I'm glad we're all still doing this and we're all still safe and well.
Yeah, when you said 4 months, it's like, well, 2 years of it was definitely during like a weird time frame. I guess like the pandemic era. It felt fast at sometimes, but really slow at other times. So I guess most of that 3 years has been while we were locked up. But we just lost the American one as I was going to introduce him, but he rejoined, so I'm going to admit him and pet my cat here while I wait and kill a little bit of dead air. and say that I got my hair cut because I just went to a event this weekend. It was, I'll tell you a little bit more about that after we introduce the American one. Cheers, Sal.
Hello, Jack panel and everyone in chat. Happy 3 years. Yeah, that's a long time. I think I came a little bit late to the party, but it's always good being here and chatting it up with you and hanging out in chat when I can. And yeah, I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you, and you're definitely on some of the earlier shows that I recall. So it's great to have you here as always, and definitely looking forward to tonight's show. I guess I've got a few possible topics we could talk about. I just went to a cannabis-related event up in Bel Air this weekend with my wife's work, where we sponsored a dab bar, and that was a pretty good time. Get to talk a little bit more about that, and also learned a little bit more about CBG and CBGA recently. Thank you to Medically Fit, because he always sends me great info. And this time I happened to actually have a little bit of downtime right when he sent me a link. And I was like, oh, CBG info from 2 doctors. And I just want to kind of share some of the pertinent info that I took from the parts that I've listened to so far. And one was kind of corroborating what Matthew has warned about in the past. When taking any cannabinoid, you should be aware that it could impact other medicines that you're taking. And they were talking about, in this case, SSRIs. And they found CBG actually improved effectiveness for SSRIs, but it also was blocking CBD. So if you took massive doses of CBG, it would counteract some of the benefits of CBD, like the anti-nausea effects that they're looking for in certain cases. So definitely something interesting to look more into. I guess I should probably share that link out to the chat so that people can listen.
As I say, I want to second that shout out to Med, because he always sends me the same links. I've been getting them too, so I really do appreciate that. I don't get to be able to check out every single one, but I do get to peruse through a lot of them.
Yeah, I end up he is really good at that, and we would reciprocate, but I haven't had time really to like hang out and just flip through all the papers and video clips that he sends. I mean, that I like would send him, but it's awesome. I go through eventually. I check every single one out, and what's really interesting to me is that there's a lot of diversity. Some of it is about field crops, which is like regenerative, real agriculture, large-scale farming that is working, which is really pretty cool. But yeah, shout out to MedFit. Thanks for continuing to send me the links, and I guess a whole bunch of people. That's really awesome.
Yeah, MedFit. Yeah, he's been doing that for years. I mean, I can remember back in the Google Hangouts days. You know, that's kind of where I first kind of started getting included on those drops.
He's definitely a advocate and firsthand, representing, sharing the knowledge and doing it in an active way, where he's looking up the sources today. Like I was saying, they were doctors and clinicians, and they were sharing some of their firsthand experience with patients, because CBG is relatively new. They talked about how harvesting early, you can get some, but it's not typically even going to be the dominant cannabinoid, where there's these new CBG genetics that have that as the dominant cannabinoid, both in hemp and on the cannabis side of things. But it is so new as far as like it wasn't previously documented and studied the way that it is able to be now. So I'm happy to see some of the benefits, but also learn more from the research now that we're able to get our hands on it and actually do the studies and see some of the firsthand accounts from doctors and things like that. Kyle, I think you mentioned that you had some CBG in one of your vape carts or something recently.
Yeah. I got this. I'm trying to find a ratio that works for me, in regards of like CBD to THC, because for some reason I'm just like have randomly become sensitive to like THC. And I know that's very vague because there's tons of cannabinoids in that, but yeah. So I got a vape pen that was CBN, CBD, and CBG, and yeah, I mean, it was just like extremely comforting. It was very light. It was clear-minded, but yet calm. And so just whatever was going on with that, I don't know if like the CBN was like bringing me like somewhat on the calmer downer side, but then like I was somewhat uplifted by, or relaxed. I'm not too sure, man, trying to self-diagnose the whole thing, but it was a really good, anybody looking for, whoever, I know, because it's weird. Like half the people I grew up with still do extreme bong rips and stuff like that, which is fine because I mean I'd probably be doing it too. But then the other half is like me, where we're just like we just get like kind of like, depending on how much we consume and stuff like that, we get anxiety and stuff. But yeah, it's just really good for anybody that's kind of in that medium of trying to figure out how to self-medicate. It really helped me a lot. But I don't know how available that type of vape pen is, because I've been to a few spots in Massachusetts and I've never seen that. So I don't know if anybody else has seen those kind of cannabinoids combined or anything.
I think the easier way would probably be sourcing them independently and then combining them up yourself, but
True.
they may be available like online, because a lot of stuff from hemp is legal now, and it's available to be shipped in all 50 states, like CBG. I know what Spartan's talked about in the past, like the Happy Buds hemp, where they have CBG and high CBD flower that's tested and available for people in all 50 states that you can then extract yourself. And they even have concentrate. One of the people that I mentioned, he actually reached out and gave me a discount for cheap home grow that I should look into, but he changed his name to Sonoma, something like Sonoma CBD. So if you check out Sonoma CBD and you use the coupon code cheap home grow, it was the guy that I talked about who gave me the free cherry wine F3 seeds. And I'm currently again blanking on his name, but he hooked me up, and that the new name is Sonoma CBD. So, and I guess he has a little bit better prices over there too. So good stuff. And anybody have anything new or exciting that happened this week? Any updates?
I got a question for you guys real quick, and maybe someone can shed some light, because I know a lot of you guys like to read a lot of stuff. I was talking to the guys over at Khalifa, and basically I would mention if they had found, like, because all they deal with is like ancestral breeding and land race, stuff like that. And I was like, hey man, have you found any really cool like cannabinoids that aren't so prevalent, that's going around? And he had mentioned THCP. Have you guys heard of that?
They just discovered it in Italy like a year ago, maybe a little more now. But yeah, it's very, very, very minor amounts in most plants, and it wouldn't surprise me that it was found in the landrace, I guess.
Yeah, I've heard about that one. They the Italians found it in some strain they had, but it was in minuscule amounts, and all the experiments and stuff that they're doing with it, they synthesize it in a lab. So
they found it was more like 30 times more active at
they claim it's 30 times more
CB1 receptors than THC comparatively.
It's like the secret gold, maybe.
But
could be. I talked about
I heard someone talking about when they do tests, they get like 99 or 99 point something percent of what they can identify, and there's still a little bit that they just, like, since it's not, they don't know what it is, they don't look for it, so they can't find it. But it's getting smaller and smaller and more. Yeah,
it's like it was like 98, now it's 99, and like part of that 1% was THCP before, but that was one of the blips on the
some compounds that they don't know what it is yet. Yeah, so that's pretty interesting.
I find it interesting that they can grow that stuff in a lab or synthetically produce it. I find that pretty wild. But
you just gotta simulate what happens in other cases, I suppose. Have you guys heard of the hydrogenated cannabinoids? I actually put it in chat just now.
Dr. Mark has worked on those. He's been on Hash Church a few times. They hydrogenated THC and CBD, and I think it makes like a different type of cannabinoid. Has different effects.
Well, supposedly, I guess because of the longer like tail chain on it, I think it's supposed to be really potent, because I guess I might be totally wrong here. You guys should check out that work. But I think it binds to the receptors, and like it stays for a longer period of time. So essentially you feel the effects for longer, if that makes sense, or certain effects rather. So
I think like all cannabinoids, it'll vary individual to individual, and they're definitely still doing early research because it's something that you have to create in a lab, and it's not widely available through a cultivar out there in the cannabis community that many of us may have been exposed to. I shouted out somebody a few shows ago, it might have even been last show, where I talked about the Free the V project, talking about THCV. Jade Nectar hunted through a bunch of land races, and they found some really high THCV cultivars, and they're giving them away for free. They finally just got their packaging in, and I'm watching one of their Instagram posts on my phone over here, but I think they're selling them for like technically a penny, just to like cover shipping or something. But
you know what varieties they were rifling through?
I should probably pull up the post and share screen and then give them the proper shout out here.
Southeast or Afghanistan regions or. Yeah, I actually just got set up for, I mean, not to kind of like, I'm not really changing the topic, but I'm actually about to drop some of those 94 Northern Lights and some Afghanistan seeds that a Marine found in over Afghanistan. So I'm pretty, I haven't really played with any of those, so I'm pretty excited.
Those two separate things, or is that a cross and it's one thing?
Totally separate. Somebody had
cool.
found a pack of seeds on someone's grandfather bought, you know, I guess when you could get the skunk or the Sensi seed magazines or one of those magazines from back in the day, they would have seeds on the back that you could get. And this guy and his uncle have been growing them outdoors in New England for the last, I don't know, 30, 40 years or however long it's been. And so the epigenetics are like irreplaceable because they're just acclimated to New England.
Yeah, that's like a local land race now almost.
Yeah, I mean, and the weather is pretty extreme up here, so if it can do its whole cycle and do well, I mean, it's pretty nice.
Always interesting to see how stuff can acclimate to climate and how it may change or may not change when it is shipped to a different place and is grown out. Seeing like the Velvet Punch grown, my buddy Vegan Doja bred the F1 in NorCal, and then he sent it to me here in Southern California, and I made F2s and F3s and sending them to people all over the world, or all over the US, I should say. Seeing them grown out, a lot of them found the same flavors that I was finding. So it's interesting what can and does shine through. But I'm going to share my screen and just give Jade Nectar a little bit of a shout out while I look for, I was like scrolling through the page and I can't find the exact post where they describe the genetic variations that they found, but I just want to give them a shout out for doing good work and sharing genetics to the community, because THCV is extremely rare. Subcool's genetics were some of the only other ones I'd heard of that had it, other than like Doug's Baron, which is a cut that was hard to get. But here's the guy who is making it all happen. I don't actually know his name, but the page is right here. You see Jade Nectar, and he's showing off some of the packaging. But I'm going to click through some of the other posts so that we can maybe find the genetic lineage where he talks about it.
Shout out to anybody holding on to any seeds pre-2000, man, because that stuff's going to be worth a lot at some point.
I guess it depends how the market will move and what people want, because it's like, will it be the niche people looking for that? And like, I think that things are going to continue to evolve and we'll look back to certain things, but other things might not be so popular. It's going to be like you'll have to really know what people want. And I guess like Northern Lights, I think is definitely going to be one. It was one of the most classics of all time, but I'm not the best at talking and reading at the same time. And this is definitely not the post where he describes the genetic lineage, but he's showing off some of the germination and stuff. And I think he said like 92% germination. And I think they're going to be 20 packs of seeds. So not a bad thing. So I'm definitely going to be hitting him up to get a pack myself, because I want to be able to have THCV in my arsenal of medical collection for growing at your own home. So it'll be cool to have access to a high cannabinoid source of THCV.
Where's he out of? Oregon or Cali?
I think it's Oregon or NorCal for sure. I'm not 100% sure. I gotta go back to the page now. Let's see. Sun-grown Santa Cruz. Yep. So NorCal. Central/NorCal.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's so cool watching them things grow, man. When I went through that, when I first met you guys, I was kind of running through all like Kerala's and Malawis, and it's just so interesting to see like the original bodies of a lot of these cultivars, what we have now, and which you can kind of see which direction they kind of went and with things, and it's really cool to kind of tap into those things.
Anybody else grow landrace other than Kyle? Have any experiences with them? And if so, what are your thoughts?
I've grown some
I don't know.
stuff.
Go ahead, Brandon.
That's very true, Brandon.
Grown some stuff. I actually grew some Thai weed that Kyle gave me. I didn't get to finish it off though, because it just like went all over the place, and I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna work.
Dude, that thing was an animal, man. That thing
I was
was
like, I'll have
animal.
to save this for like some future date when I have a removed head ceiling.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was like I couldn't do that. That didn't work. But I did a bunch of the Russian autoflower stuff, and it definitely has a more open structure. Hey, Chubby.
Brenda, did that have more of like a peppery, or did that have like a different kind of terpene on those?
Kind of had like a piney lemon, pepper and pine.
Nice.
All of the ones that I ran they're pretty similar. But they had a lot more of an open structure. They weren't like something that would be like commercially producible. They might have some type of unique characteristic that we could use for breeding and things like that. But ideally, I'd want to know what that is. And, in the next couple of years, it'll be less expensive with the sequencing. You'll just be able to see mold resistance, like what type of things these plants inherently have. It'll be really interesting to see also, given the proper nutritional profiles without and also taking away kind of really, really harsh environmental stress factors, to see what the genetics look like under like kind of almost optimal growing conditions, to see what type of things are kind of upregulated. And then, maybe do the type of experiment where you have like an environmental stress factor and you test. I'd be really curious to see what type of genes are expressed under different conditions with the same plant.
The Wageningen University in the Netherlands does a lot, and I think I've talked about this before, but they do a lot of sort of phenotype, genotype, and sort of environmental research regarding various crops. And I've been seeing in various places that people who study these things at Wageningen are doing this also for cannabis more and more, and they're looking into it. And I'm very curious to see what they come up with along those lines.
I feel like as the technology becomes less expensive, we'll be able to have exactly what we're looking for. Like, we'll be able to find the type of characteristics that might be inherent in some of these wild populations that are really used to dealing with these high stress factors, whether it's insect pressure or soil salinity or the lack of nutrition in soil, any number of things, because all those things inherently are going to affect fertilization, and that happens on a cellular level. So it's going to change the way the plant expresses itself. We see that with the nutrition thing, especially when you go see wild populations. If you look on a lot of the like social media channels where there's people who are exploring native populations of cannabis, I think that to be able to see an optimal expression of what those genetics could express, you would have to have kind of optimal growing conditions and optimal nutrition. So it'd be really interesting to take those types of things. Hey, sorry guys. My dog constantly harasses the cat.
I would be upset too if I was allergic to everything.
Yeah, and he, it sucks because it's not really my cat. My ex-girlfriend left it here. And now I'm just like trying to find a place for it to go. And my dog's allergic to it. So I don't blame him. He's like, get that thing out of here.
Honestly, it's very responsible of you to find a responsible way to handle that with the cat, because I know people could appreciate that. I used to know a guy who would tell me that he often encountered like strays, especially up in the mountains, like in Northern California even, because people would just, for whatever reason, just decide that that's the way that they want to do that. And well, it can introduce some problems for the local environment for sure.
Yeah, they'll kill everything. But the one thing I wanted to answer Cal's questions from earlier, some of the work that they were looking through as far as the seeds that they found the THCV in, I don't think they specified, or at least I can't find the specific post yet, but some of the seeds that they're looking through are lamb's bread, Tajikistan, Zamal, Ethiopian, Thai, Iranian, Madagascar, Acapulco, Malawi, 20 Afghan varieties, Pakistani, Iranian, Egyptian, Moroccan, Panama Red, Colombian, to name a few. And so yeah, definitely they're doing the work out there. They have a
Pretty
huge
wild.
300 unique landrace cannabis plants will fill their garden in the upcoming months. So shout out to Jade Nectar doing some really cool work and hunting for
I
those
think
unique
I
cannabinoids.
think I think I grew a land race out once. My buddy, he ended up marrying a Ghana woman from Ghana, and they went to go visit, and he brought back seeds, and I put them inside, and I tell the story a lot. Like in a week, they were through the light into hitting the ceiling. It was just like ridiculous. So I super crapped them, and that was ineffective because they just continued. It was unbelievable how quickly that thing took over. And I even hit it with a male plant that was like a short stab thing, and I grew out that shit, and it did the same exact thing. So I pretty much stopped. I still have some of those seeds somewhere, but yeah, it was I couldn't do it. It was impossible, really, unless I did like the wraparound centrical circle kind of, you know what I mean? Yeah, it was crazy.
Land races are definitely difficult, especially indoors. And I think that's why we so often saw them cross to short, squatty plants to make them the hybrids that are more reasonable to grow inside. And I sent the group this week a little Cornell hemp research study. And interestingly, I think it talked about some IPM stuff that I found interesting. Maybe these unique land races might be one of the places to start looking for resistance. But the stuff that they were looking at in New York, as far as hemp goes, actually found like what they considered to be no genetic resistance. Some stuff did a little bit better than other things, but they didn't have anything that was like truly resistant to certain. They even had different ones. I think Matthew, I should have specified to you that there were some things that I'd seen in there that I hadn't seen anywhere else before, and I'm sure you might be interested in the IPM section of that. But they even talked about like botrytis and white powdery mildew and things like that, and none of the cultivars that they had showed resistance to that. So they're going to keep looking and even maybe do breeding efforts to find stuff that will work in New York outdoors through the harsh environments.
I'm curious to hear more about that, definitely. And I would also agree that certainly there's a precedent for looking into landrace and just sort of like wild, essentially, populations and ancestral populations for crop plants that we've had for hundreds and thousands of years. And I would not expect that to be very different, not significantly different here for cannabis, for that matter.
I think it'll hopefully sprout something up. I was looking at, because I just found, shout out to Sungrown 707. He gave me some, they used to be called Jelly Rancher seeds from Humboldt Seed Company, but then now they're called Hella Jelly. I think they want to avoid like the Skittles and every other person who's been sued by a brand with a similar name controversy. So they changed the strain name there. But I was looking into, a post popped up on my page from them. And I saw a thing where he was talking about, since 2018, they've been doing 10,000 plant hunts across 10 different farms. So about 1,000 plants per farm, roughly, and going through and finding really special shit. So doing that kind of numbers, and he's not alone in that. I know there's many other people doing that, not only in the US, but all over the world now. So it's going to be cool to see what we were able to find resistance wise, flavors wise, highs, smells, appearances. I mean, there's just so much diversity in this plant. It's going to be amazing to see what continues to spring up. Good old silence. Spartan, how are things going over there in Michigan land?
Oh, I don't know, man. I'm sitting here digging on a bowl right now. That was my concentration was on, but I got to clean this thing up. But Yeah, man. I mean, good
Give us
news
an
is,
update.
yeah. So the good news in as far as the fight with the MCMA kind of goes is the suite of bills. It was starting with the House Bill 5300 that was going to be really restrictive on home grow as far as caregivers go. Still does not have enough votes. The last whip count revealed to them that they didn't want to bring it up. It's been on the schedule every week. If you look at Tuesday, you'll see it on the schedule, but it's never brought up. So that's a good sign. That means they don't have the 2/3 majority to even bring it to they don't feel like they have it. So, which is good, because if they thought it was even close, they'd call a vote. But they have introduced a couple other bills. There's one bill that's right now in the regulation committee that is being opposed by most of all the other industry. So I find in the initial like meetings and stuff, the way that the regulatory committee, the questions they were asking and stuff, it didn't sound like they were totally convinced either. So I'm not really too worried about that. But what that was there was just recently a Supreme Court case here in Michigan where somebody who had there's a process here, and it's like this in many states, where there's a drug court option to where somebody could go to a drug court and they can get things off their record if they jump through the hoops through the state. Well, somebody was going through drug court and the judge was trying to hold it against them and kick them out because they were using medical marijuana, even though I don't want to call it that. And the Supreme Court of Michigan overturned that and said that he was wrong to do that and they can't do that. So this legislation was obviously very timely, because right after that, this was introduced, and what it's going to do is allows those judges in drug courts to decide whether to allow the person to use it or not on a case-to-case basis, which, I mean, when you can say easily to any lawmaker, so you mean to tell me we need a law that says that a sitting judge can overturn what a doctor says is good for you medically, because they have a doctor's recommendation, and you're saying that a judge knows better than the doctor what's good for this person. So I think that's a pretty hard, I don't know, question to answer. So I'm not too scared on that one going through.
Well, and if they win, it sets a legal precedent, whether they want to say it's case by case or not. If they allowed that one case, then every other case is going to be like, well, hey, that case got approved. How is my case any different? I have medical needs. So they can try and approve it. And at least it's better than an outright flat no and a ban, which could happen in some circumstances. So
right.
There's a small win there and an opportunity for it to be good moving forward.
One other, and I agree with you 100%. And then one positive note, let me get the name right. Representative Yosef Rabi entered a bill to deschedule cannabis here in Michigan because there's a state level straight level controlled substance list, just like at the federal level. And even though we've here in Michigan, legalized cannabis, both medicinally and recreationally, it's still on the controlled substance list, and it's still Schedule 1. And that causes a lot of issues it touches so many things. It's hard to just get into it and take up too much time. So it's basically a cleanup step, but it's something that's long overdue. And hopefully it has a lot of bipartisan support. So hopefully it's going to go right through. But I mean, we're at literally, they just introduced that. I think it was Wednesday or something like that. So I'm really excited to see that. And that's all I can think of off the top of my head.
That's a good update. It sounds like good things moving forward. And I don't know, something to be optimistic about. And you're always keeping your eyes open, which is important to make sure they don't slip any bad shit in front of you. But I guess to go back to one of the topics I was talking about at the beginning of the show, and something that I saw Brandon post about earlier this week. And I want to give a warning before I get into this topic. This is not financial advice, and don't ever take financial advice from people online. Do your own research. What we're talking about is going to be a speculative finance instrument, but I saw Brandon was portrayed in a type of art called an NFT, or a non-fungible token. Okay. And the event I went to this weekend was an NFT party. So I just wanted to ask Brandon, about, and before I ask you, I want to say, if you're going to invest in NFTs, 99% of the ones I've seen have been scams. So don't invest more than like 1% of your net worth, because you can lose serious money and fuck yourself over. So be careful out there on the internet, investing in anything. But Brandon, I saw that you were recently portrayed in an NFT on
Yeah.
Instagram.
I was
What's the deal? What's going on?
I didn't even know about it, but I guess there was this big NFT project that was a limited release of 100 NFTs that were going to be dropped periodically, and that would be iconic people in the cannabis industry. And I found out about it like the night before it dropped. And he's like, "Hey, I'm dropping an NFT of you." And I was like, "All right." And he's like, "You have a bio?" And I get asked this question so many times. I should have one written out. I should have a really nice one written out, and I don't. So I was just like, I just wrote some random shit for him, and I think that's what he put. I don't know if that's what he put or not. I don't know.
That's a hell of a collaboration.
It was. I like I said, it didn't have anything to do with it. So
that's what I'm saying. You know, buyer beware. Be skeptical with these projects. This guy used Brandon's name and likeness without even asking him, and was like, "Hey,
Do you
is
like
this
the
cool?"
way it looks, Brandon?
Yeah, Brandon.
I don't give a shit. Hey, look at this. All publicity is good publicity.
There you go.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, if whatever they're doing, regardless, helps drive people to good quality products, microbes that are affordable and effective as anything else that's on the market, I mean, then it's all good. I don't care. I think it's an honor, you know what I mean, to be included on their project. And the thing is, look, it is a project. These people have to take actual time and resource to build these things. And so you're investing in a piece of art. Yes, it's digital, but it's super weird, because like technology is exponentially increasing. And when we're talking about computing, we have quantum computers. Like, I don't know I don't know what the future exactly is going to look like, but I do know that a lot of the technologies that we use today are going to become very, very affordable and very obtainable very quickly. So if you can think about, the digital age and digital currencies and digital art, and, just think about how musicians put out albums. What if those albums are what we call a non-fungible token, right? Or something like that, where they could buy that. There's a limited amount of that. And if somebody else wants to buy it off of them, they can. And it's like a digital piece of product.
One thing I like is that the artists can get paid like a set amount, like 1%, 5%, or 10% every time it's resold. They get money back. So anything that supports the actual artist, I'm a fan of. I think it's going to be like a way to verify like your seed pack in the future. Like, here's Brandon, your little art or whatever. There will only be 35 NFTs of the whatever packs that you put out. And it'll be a verification that, it came with this pack of seeds and this person on the blockchain or whatever. If anybody's sophisticated enough to know about all this stuff, they'll understand. But it can be way over a lot of people's heads. It's over my head at a lot of the times. But the only reason I really brought it up was to go back to the beginning of the show. I kind of mentioned that I was in Bel Air. My wife's work got contracted to do a dab bar for a little mansion party for an NFT drop called the Baby Ape Social Club. You can't make this up. It's based off of or inspired by what's called the Bored Ape Yacht Club. I think I could be misremembering, but those are selling for like 10 times what like my car would go. Like, some of them are like, it's crazy. Like, we're talking
depressing.
Like 200,000 to $1 million on some of these digital art projects.
Okay, so I usually don't like to engage in super basis speculation when I can, but I'll do a little bit here. I've heard that things like NFTs, although I am a fan of things like the math that might allow people to, one, like get paid like you were talking about, Jack, and also like just the sort of cryptography of the math is interesting to me, though I don't know it. I don't understand it. But I was going to say, I've heard that one of the reasons for this is to launder money.
It's definitely being used. I mean, crypto in
Yeah.
general, but they use cash to launder money.
Also to avoid taxes. But
No,
Exactly,
doesn't
yeah, that
everybody
kind of
kind of
stuff
want
too.
to avoid taxes? Like, doesn't everybody like? Isn't that kind of the burden of what's going on? Like,
In the
government
US,
isn't
crypto,
getting
you pay
anything
tax.
done.
Yeah,
if you are doing it honestly, if you're trading or buying and selling crypto in the US, you pay tax on it. We have made regulations for it, and we're making a lot of money in the US every year from people paying. Like I'm watching TV and I get commercials for TurboTax, and they're like, I'm a millionaire. I'm not a millionaire. I'm a millionaire. I'm not a millionaire. There's this little commercial, and it's like, oh, I'm a tax expert for crypto people, so you can worry about your trades and we'll worry about your taxes or whatever.
You've got to risk it for the biscuit.
Well, there was a fucking Matt Damon Super Bowl commercial about crypto, and then like all of them like plummeted after that. But it's like, it's went too mainstream when. But yeah, it's general. It's interesting for sure. Somebody just sent a big link in the chat.
There's going to be some interesting things. I don't know a whole lot about it, right? I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do know some people that are into software engineering and that they work with these really advanced machines. And so a lot of whatever they talk about in the language that they talk about is kind of over my head, and they use these graphs that don't make any sense to me. But the basic of it is things are going to change very, very rapidly with our financial systems as well. So
like Russia right now, their ruble price is going down a lot. So a lot of people there, I'm sure, would benefit from having had cryptocurrency maybe before all this happened. I know the prices of that stuff fluctuates a lot, but if your own currency, I know other countries have had issues, like the Turkish lira being famously one that has had a lot of issues, and Russia, even in the past with inflation, has had tons of issues. So that's the reason some people like crypto, but it is highly speculative.
The Russian people are in more trouble. They give a fuck less a point right now about money. They just want to have fucking food, worried about all kinds of shit.
Yeah, Russia and Ukraine, both sides are actually having big issues.
Okay, so I will say this, because before anybody goes back and forth, I want to say this. I'm smart enough to know that the military propaganda machine has utilized technology, and I honestly do not know what is real, and I will not, and I have enough sense to know that the media and our government and other people's governments, whatever's going on, there's something else going on, and I have no clue what that is. So I don't want to speculate or because I just don't know. I don't know the truth. There's too much misinformation, and there's too much I don't know. I don't have any firsthand experience on it.
As somebody who wanted to go into military intelligence, like for a large majority of my younger youth years, that was my track. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to join the U.S. Army commission and do MI work or something. That was my preferred branch. Misguided as I think it is now. And I'll say this, Brandon, I think that's very wise of you.
Yeah, take anything you see on the news with a grain of salt. I'll say that. But to get back to the topic, it'll get back to weed, but I'm going to transition it with the NFT crypto thing. NFTs are just art that you can only buy with crypto. So like the one that I went to was a project that's on Solana, which is like there's Bitcoin and Ethereum are like the big two everyone knows, but Solana's another one, a coin out there. And the party was actually a pretty good time. We had like 5 dab rigs set up. Every single one got alcohol swabbed and then wiped down. There was also hundreds of joints that were given out, courtesy of West Coast Cure. It was a good time. And my wife loaded up 2 14-gram or half-ounce joints, and only one of them actually got smoked. The other one got sold, and it was a good time. Going up, I don't typically go to Bel Air mansion parties. That's not my typical weekend, so it was a nice little change of pace and a fun time. I guess unknowingly celebrating the 3-year anniversary. I was paid to be there, so it wasn't like I was wasting money or anything. But
and paid and at the big ritzy place.
Yeah,
you got to work your way into more of those. But I'll say with what Brandon said, we don't know what we don't know, and I agree. Yeah, we just don't know what's going on. Thank goodness we're all. Well, I don't know. Thank goodness for me that I don't have any kids and I don't have to worry. But I digress.
Was anyone here familiar with Old Timer One?
Yeah. I heard he just passed away.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah,
We
he
talked about
was-
him like last week's show because I was saying how Brandon mentioned that Old Timer One
Yeah.
said he did not give Blue Skies Vienna
No, he
genetics.
didn't. No, yeah.
And Kyle was talking about he's going to hunt through some of Blue Skies
Yeah, I mean,
Vienna's
that's
work.
that's part of the seeds I'm popping in about the next couple of days.
I mean, I don't know him personally, but I know
I-
you
I
guys
didn't-
did.
I
If you
didn't-
want to talk about him.
I didn't know him personally either, but I know he was like one of the OGs of the game. He was one of the guys that had original skunk stock. I don't know how the story went and stuff, but I'm sure Jack would probably be a better historian than myself.
Well, it's funny because Blue Skies, for like the old timer saying that he never actually gave him any work, did a good job like purporting the story of like Old Timer One had pre Skunk Man Sam
Right.
skunk. So like most of the skunk I've seen in Amsterdam libraries, you'll see called Skunk One. You order it and then you get these kind of like sweet piney. They look like Colombian hybrids, and they're good, but they're not skunky. And
Right.
they never were skunky. They never get skunky. There's not really much that you can do to bring out skunkiness. Like I know hundreds of people that have grown them across over a decade, and no one's finding anything skunk in there ever. So the theory is when Sam, there was a group called Sacred Seeds, also known as Cultivator's Choice. And I've seen a seed catalog from them as early as 1985. So one of the earlier seed producers as well. So they got busted in California, and Skunk Man Sam somehow escaped. Some people think that he cooperated with law enforcement, and that's how he got away. He later got DEA contracts and things like that while he was working in Amsterdam and other countries. But I digress. The point is, when he went to Amsterdam, he started working with the genetics that Sacred Seeds was a whole group of cultivators and breeders that were all working together, kind of like a TGA, like a collective of breeders all making strains and all kind of putting them out under a flagship kind of thing. Well, Sam, when he was working on his own in Amsterdam, I guess skunk isn't like really, I don't even know if they have them over there at all. So it's a very noticeable smell and it stands out over there. So I guess he picked and bred away from it deliberately. He alleges, I guess, but it may have been unintended. I don't know what the true intentions and everything are behind it. Some people love Sam, some people hate him. I don't want to speak too much about Skunk Man Sam himself, but some of the work I've heard about him doing, it all kind of sounds like things for whatever reason ended up going a lot more sweet, more piney, and not skunky. So if you have pre-Sam skunk, then it could have actually been more likely skunky. And
I think
that's why
that's-
it's highly desirable to have that stock.
I feel like that has a lot of validity to it, Jack, because like, everyone's saying, like how Ag Seed Company has these, like you said, everyone's just getting these different terpene profiles, but the only ones I've heard that were like literal like death and like rotting corpse and baby shit mixed with like burning oil or all this weird shit has come from air quotes, Old Timer One stuff. So something's going on there, yeah.
Because like, who's to say that Old Timer One didn't send out some seeds to somebody that he was friends with? He didn't maybe know his name or something. He maybe changed his name, or he got those seeds from somebody who got them from Old Timer One, kind of thing. So maybe it's possible that he got them from there. And the AG Seed Co. is Mel Frank / Skunk Man Sam stock from 1988 is what I saw it labeled when he was putting those out. I think they've already sold out though, or limited drops. But that's Todd McCormick's work that he's been doing. Some with Skunk Man Sam and Mel Frank and a few of the other OGs in the game.
Yeah, somebody just sent me a bunch of those skunk number ones. Pretty interested in seeing what that's all about.
From the authentic genetics source.
Yeah. Somebody else had gotten them and then like gifted me some. I mean, I'm not. I haven't grown any out yet, nor do I want to tap into. I'm trying to go like you said, how we were just saying. Like I want to get some profiles that like aren't quite as common. So I'm going in theory, like you said, I'm going kind of before that with the other stuff.
I think that, and even like you were talking about with Northern Lights, are definitely good places to look, because in that era there was a lot more skunky flower going around. So definitely a potential to find it in there, I would guess at least. I've heard like Duke Diamond mention that's where he's going to look if he's going to look for skunk.
My only concern is here I am like, stress testing all these varieties. Here I am going to take something that's been purely outdoors and then trying to see how well it does indoors for one, and then how well it'll do in the seed generations past that, indoors. So I think hopefully I don't run into some serious issues in there. Something I was thinking about today.
I'll just maybe potentially early bearer of bad news or play devil's advocate and give you a pre-warning and say a lot of the time from the stuff I've seen and even in your own experience, when you take something that's been exclusively grown outdoors and you try and bring it indoor, it struggles because it's such a different environment, the artificial nature.
I don't like it too much.
So it could just be something to look out for, but you never know. There's always those exceptions, and there's a very, just as likely that it could be just fine when it goes inside. Northern Lights was actually one of the varieties that grew extremely well indoors. As when people started transitioning to indoor cultivation, that it's like when you hear in all the High Times books, that's one that they talk about. I think it was also low smell or like no smell with certain phenoms. So people picked it for that to pre-carbon filter days to try and avoid getting busted. So
weirdly when I did all that landrace and heirloom stuff, they weren't all that horrible, honestly. You would think the tie or some of that stuff just would have been like real droopy and like really aggravated, but they hung in there. But I think, maybe the issue will probably end up being more extremely stressed environments, creating more, intersex problems. But we'll see. I'll keep you guys posted as I go through and, moving forward. Be interesting.
I'll say like in nature, like the wind, even if it's like low, almost like never stops. And then like you see like situations in a grow room where somebody's like power goes out or a fan breaks or dies, and like a plant will be sitting in an area where there's like no airflow. So like you're saying, those incredibly stressful environments, like when people don't have a perfectly dialed in grow, or even if they do, when the power goes out or generator breaks or fails or AC compressor kicks out, whatever it is, that puts your plants in an environment that's terrible, and they have to sit in there for maybe a few days or weeks. How they react to that is probably maybe like nothing they've ever seen or would see in nature. But that's the part of the challenge of cultivating artificially indoors, I guess, and not artificially, they're real plants, but creating an artificial environment to the best of our abilities comes with complications at times, for sure. How's the power been over in Oklahoma for you, Brandon? Have things been pretty consistent? I know we talked that you haven't had any tornadoes really, but I know there's like ice storms and stuff that come in and out.
Yeah, nothing major.
Good to hear. I know it's coming maybe close to the end of the season up there. I don't know about Michigan, but Ohio's winters would drag on for a while. And in California, we don't really have a perspective of it. But how's the weather up there, Spartan?
It was 60 degrees yesterday.
Yes, sir.
And they're calling for, I think it's 2 to 4 inches of snow in the middle of next week. So that was our false fucking spring. So our second winter's coming, and then we'll have real spring coming behind that, hopefully.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to get cold out here for a second too. But, it's all right.
That makes outdoor tricky for people that want to get out early. I know it's a little easier in California than some places, but in Oklahoma and Michigan, you can get those cold snaps. And if you get out too soon, you can kill your stuff.
Yeah.
Make sure it's
unless you're undercover, you don't want to be out there before, June 1st is when I'd plant, usually traditionally outside, if I was going right in the ground.
I've seen people start here people here go year round, but you could start here a lot earlier than that. I'll say that. We're quite fortunate. You said 60. I was like, hey, that's what it is here right now. Like 60 is pretty nice. But then we're having 2 to 4 inches of snow. And I'm like, I remember those fucking, you think winter's over, and then you get like a nice little patch of warm weather, you're like t-shirt, shorts on. And then like next day you're back in your, hoodie, like snowshoes and things like that. So it's no fun.
We kind of had that almost here in Southern California because at least according to my weather app, it's supposed to rain quite a bit. And we had some rains and some lightning storms, actually. Did you see any of that, Jack?
We didn't get lightning where I was at, but we had a frost advisory warning. We got into the 30s a few of the mornings, which is like San Diegans don't even brave the streets when it's that cold.
It's true.
It's funny. Like people are so bundled up and or like just don't go out. Like a lot of the beaches, for example, are pretty much empty. If you see somebody on the beach when it's between 30 and 50 in San Diego, they're undoubtedly a tourist, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I
in
used to be
fact,
one of them. I'm not judging.
And some of the chaparrals up in the sort of the mountain, sort of more hilly areas, it's snowing, and that's pretty amazing to me. Even
I don't miss it as far as somebody who's hoping to do some greenhouse cultivation in the hopefully not too distant future. It'll be nice to have the consistent weather where, especially with the greenhouse with LEDs and potential for heat and AC, will be climate controlling all year round. It's just a matter of how much light will we have to be supplementing at which times of the season. Because I know certain people in San Diego actually run shade cloth because the sun gets so intense during certain parts of the summer. So it's going to be an interesting challenge to dial in exactly how much light the plants will want in a greenhouse setting with the ability to supplement LEDs as well. I know, Brandon, you had a lot of success with the HPS. I know those also put out a good amount of heat. So when you're in those colder times, you can crank them, especially at nighttime, to help regulate the temperatures. Have you had any opportunities to go into greenhouses with LED, or would you maybe implement more heating if you're going into something like that?
If I was going to do a greenhouse, I'd try to build it out with a kind of smaller. It's easier to control the environment with a smaller greenhouse. And then you could just build more of them. It's a lot more easier to control. So from that aspect, yeah, I would just do smaller greenhouses. They're easier to control. And, you know, Oklahoma, that there's a trade-off. So when you're, especially when you start to scale things, you're going to have to look at this. How much energy does it cost to run the HPS light? How much would it cost for your like propane or gas to heat those greenhouses? You know, if you were running LED, because those things do heat up the greenhouses, especially in the cold. And that's kind of like one of the benefits of having that. But also you have to change those bulbs every at least 6 months. So we're looking at a couple of trade-offs, and it's really hard to build that algorithm. What does it look like? It looks like, okay, it's gonna, you have to look.
We don't have
it.
a choice in California by 2023.
LED, yeah.
LED.
Yeah.
There's not a choice. So we are going to be LED, and we're gonna have to implement heat. And I'm hoping that we just get a good R value and really tight seal the greenhouse. We're planning to do what I consider to be like reasonable 4 or 5 smaller greenhouses as opposed to like one massive one.
Mhm.
And that allows a lot of, you know, things from sequential harvesting to easier climate control to if there is an outbreak of any pest, it can be isolated versus getting through the whole crop. So
with the aspect of the HPS lights putting out heat, I mean, they do, and it's as efficient if you're looking for heat as getting heat from another heating source, but it's always there whether you need it or not. I mean, it would be nicer, I would think, to be able to independently control your lights and your heater, because you don't always need heat when you need light, and you don't always need light when you need heat.
Yeah.
So I don't really think it's an advantage to have those two appliances be the same appliance, if you understand what I'm saying.
no, I totally do. It's usually just an upfront cost of operation thing for most people getting set up with HPS. It's a lot
That's what it was for us.
cheaper, but it also has like, I'll call it a dual benefit, because in certain times of the year where he's at in Oklahoma, it does actually get cold enough that the extra heat helps a little bit. But like you said, having a heater with LED lights where you have control over both is also extremely
where you can
effective.
get the light when you don't have to turn the air conditioner on, right? In certain situations or whatever, because you still want to get the extra light. But yeah, you know, the other side of that is the prices are really coming down on LEDs too. So they're not that much more than HPS, but when you factor in paying out for the heaters too, it would be.
I
especially
always
with
break
bulb
it down to
replacement.
people like this, and it seems to make it an easy decision for them. Usually I say, look, you have to look at it as like total investment at the end game. So if you're buying HPS, you know you're going to replace them down the end. You know you're going to. So, and the longer it takes you to replace them, the more it even costs you, because you're replacing bulbs on top of that. So if you can skip the step of spending all that money to doing all that and go right to your end game and go to LED from the get-go, and then you're not going to spend all that money. Now, what do you gain from getting HPS is you might be able to get operational sooner. If that's all it is the cost that you're worried about. You might be able to get a harvest in which is big for some people. But at the same time, there's no ROI on that investment, in my opinion, because it's wasted money because you're going to be replacing it and you know it before you even bought them.
Some don't. Some people don't. Some people are still in the mindset that this is like the way, it's the only way to grow good.
Well, look
or
at
in their
California.
perspective.
There's going to be regulations that are going to eventually force you to do it.
They
Oh,
haven't yet, but
And I'm with it because I've seen it personally. Like I was one of those people, I got CMH to start because it was more affordable for my space. It worked. And especially a few years ago, the prices of LEDs were not what they are now. So it got me started, but then I switched over to LED that was more appropriately fit for my space and immediately saw benefit. So going into a more commercial environment, I definitely, if I'm going to build it to, if I could do everything perfectly, like how I want to, I'm going to pick LED and then have heat and AC as needed. So I definitely think that's in a perfect world, what I think most of us would grab for.
and the other side of this is the LEDs don't put out that much less heat than the HPS. So I mean, it's just a function of the power draw. You can pretty well calculate how much heat a fixture is going to add to the grow space by the power draw, and that's regardless of lighting technology. It's true for the HPS lights and it's true for the LED lights. 600-watt LED is going to end up putting the same amount of heat into the grow space that a 600-watt HPS is.
If it was sealed, but in a greenhouse where LEDs let their heat drift off the top of the light and maybe there's a truss above it that can allow some of that heat to vent, it's a little bit different where the HPS actually shoots the heat down onto the plants. You can see it with infrared camera. My grower's actually done testing with his own ceramic metal halide, which he sells. So like to me, it felt like a fair side by side. He just showed the flare camera of the CMH versus the LED, and he showed the hanging heights and he showed the plant canopy temperatures. And it's something that I've shared many times in the past.
Yes, if you're in literally an open space, but if the space is confined, if you're heating up a space, and if you're in a greenhouse, you're going to be heating up that greenhouse too. The heat energy in terms of the BTU load on that space is going to be the same.
Right, per 1,000 watts.
HID lights definitely direct more of their heat sort of directly at the plants, and they put out more of the infrared energy, but the sort of absolute amount of heat that's added to the space is going to be the same. And LEDs are more efficient, so you get more light for the same amount of power. So, where you may have needed 1,000 watts for HPS, you only need 600 watts for an LED. And for that reason, you're adding less heat to the space. But the LEDs still heat up most people's grow spaces enough, and most people still only have to worry about the cooling side of the equation.
Right, and that's because I think per every 1,000 watts of electricity, I think it's 3,400 BTUs. Whether it's an LED
there's
light
an equation.
or,
It's about the wattage times 3.4 something. I don't remember the exact number, but that is sort of how many BTUs per watt you get.
So with that in mind, it's like you were kind of describing, the savings would be by hanging less total wattage of LEDs to get roughly the same amount of light.
Exactly.
But then it depends on your environment, how good your R value is on insulation and things like that, and what quality AC and dehumidifiers and heaters you have, because there are varying qualities of that. We look at the light efficiencies, but people don't even think about their dehumidifier efficiencies or their all the other devices that are running. Some of those create a shit ton of heat to only pull some water out of the air, where some of them are a lot more efficient at pulling water out of the air. So your total load, if you get the more efficient thing across the board, not just the LED, but better fans, better everything, you can drop the total electrical load and have more effective work being done, whether it's light output or dehumidification. There's technologies getting a little bit better in all aspects of growing.
Yeah, for sure. And dehumidifiers, I don't know how many growers in our audience are using dehumidifiers. It'd be interesting. I don't imagine very many of them, but if you're in a sealed space like that, the efficiency on that is extremely important to understand, both in how efficiently it'll take water out of the air and how much power you need to do that.
I've seen a lot of them. I mean, Quest and Andin seem to be the popular ones, but then in the commercial space, it seems like the reheat option with the cannabis mechanical, he's described that you can add that to most typical ACs to get great dehumidification out of your current ACs without having to add a bunch of dehumidifiers. So that's an option. I definitely implore people to look into that. But Spartan, I think you guys run quests at your commercial space. Do you run anything at home for dehumidification? Other
Yeah,
than
I
for your
just run
drying?
regular. Run regular house units, but they're, let me see, the brand is Frigidaire. I run Frigidaire. I remember, I can't recommend them enough because I can remember, shoot, they're at least 5 years old, and I bought them both the same time on a sale. It was an online sale on Best Buy, and I bought two of them, and I love them. And they've never broke down on me or anything. Got one in just the corner of the basement, just dehumidifying the whole space of the basement, and then I have the other one I use in my grow, in my flower room.
I mean, Frigidaire is, I would say, a pretty trustworthy brand in the household appliance space generally. I've had good experiences with them, and I'm happy to hear that yours extended to the dehumidifiers and that you don't have to pay the cannabis tax on devices. I know a lot of people get sort of taxed for a lot of things within the space. So it's nice when you can actually just get a household unit that is reliable and effective for your needs. Because like Doc kind of was alluding to, I think the Andon and Quest units, like even their smallest unit is, it's way overkill for me. Like I'm in a closet in a tent. Like most dehumidifiers are overkill for me. So that's why I'm not currently using one. And I think
well,
a lot
there's
of
that
people
side of it.
can get away with it.
I'm sorry. Finish
Oh,
your
you're
thought,
okay.
Jack.
I was just saying most people can get away with not having to run it like you were kind of commenting.
Yeah, well, most people, I think, are set up with exhaust, and they're running a ventilated grow, and it's really difficult. I mean, you can dehumidify a long room in that situation, but it's often sort of a choice between exhausting the air or dehumidifying the air. And I think most home growers choose to go with exhaust. Now, some growers may be trying to also dehumidify, and maybe they're doing that with a long room, like I suggested. But I think there may also be growers out there that are trying to dehumidify the tent sort of in vain, as they're also exhausting the air. So, you know, I basically look at those as options. If you live someplace where you can get away with exhausting the air, then you generally don't use dehumidification. If you live someplace where you can't get away with exhausting the air, then you seal up the space and you have to use air conditioning and dehumidification to sort of condition that air again for you. And again, with long rooms, you can kind of fudge at that in different ways, depending on how, and I've basically run grows like that with my air conditioning, where I air condition the room that the tent is in and let it sort of cycle that air through. Dehumidification can work in that same way too. But yeah, it's just interesting to think. I've always wondered how many of our growers are sort of set up in these different ways, but most of the growers that I think I talk to are exhausting their air.
Well, depending on environment, your AC actually has a dehumidifying effect,
Right.
depending on how high or low your RH is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the act of cooling the air has a sort of dehumidifying effect.
I run a sealed grow or sealed flower room, so for smell, that's why. And so I have to dehumidify and air condition. But I mean, with LEDs, you don't even have to air condition a whole lot.
Do you ever have to humidify in your situation? Because I know like Colorado and
I've had to
Arizona.
Yeah, I'm actually currently humidifying. In the dead of
Early in
winter,
the
there's
grow.
usually zero fucking humidity, so you have to add.
The plants
Yeah.
themselves put out a lot of humidity, so that's usually only a problem, right? When they're small, when they're like seedlings and stuff.
Well, that's if you fill your space. I have a flower room that I used to have 4 lights in, and I grow half as many now. I have 2 lights going, so it's a big open space that
Yeah,
it tends to not build a lot of humidity anymore.
It's easier to keep the RH kind of where the plants would like it when you're packing the whole entire space with plants. But as soon as you have a big air cavity in the room, the RH starts to go down when it's not packed so densely with mostly water plants, I guess, or a good portion of them are putting out a ton of water through their leaf. It's a better way of thinking about it. And
I honestly love the bigger space to work in, and I love the bigger space because it's easier to control. Like for example, the humidity.
I envy it. You also can you have like a clean spot on that side of like the tent where you can like work in and you can look at the plant. I don't know. I wish I had more space.
I can right now go around my entire, I've got two, a picture, just two lights right next to each other. So 4x8. So it's like a rectangle. I can walk all the way around except for on one short end. So there's only one short end that I can't, that's on a wall, but I can get like all the way around every plant now. It's amazing. Awesome.
It's good for access. It's just not that great for light efficiency. To be able to, you're sort of losing a lot of light around those edges, but I understand
it's not production grow. It's a fucking home grow.
Yeah. Still, you're losing a lot. I mean,
I'm doing
if
great,
you had a reflective wall right around those plants,
I'm doing really good, I thought.
What's that?
That I'm doing really good. I don't feel like I'm losing shit.
Well, you're losing a lot of light.
I'm doing great.
Did you?
I guess theoretically it has
use some of that humate
walls.
fertilizer, Spartan?
What's that?
Did you get some of that humate fertilizer?
I've been using it, bro. I've been using.
Hey, that's just
about
crazy.
to order more. Yeah,
dude,
yeah.
It's fucking crazy.
I'm like, this is like the easy mode. It's like the in between. It's like in between organics and bottles. It's like organic bottles almost.
Yeah,
it's like an organic 3-part. Actually, it's not even a 3-part. It's a 1-part. You just use a different 1-part depending on what stage you're in.
As long as you got, some pretty decent soil.
Yeah.
And you don't use it often either. It's just like it kicks things into overdrive though.
Right now.
Did you get mushrooms sprout up or anything after using it?
I haven't seen mushrooms, but I just seen plant like health. Like it just fucking, I don't know, just like vigor and like a darker shade of green. I've only used the like for each plant, we'll say, I've used the one that's used that had the most was it got 1 dose of the N-humate. It got 2 doses of the transition or whatever it's called, complex. And then so far 1 dose of the potassium. And I'll tell you what, I like to, what I call preload potassium. So I like to bring potassium in like week 2 a little bit, just so that in organics, it's there when it wants to have it for the bulking. And dude, I gave it that at week 2 and the plants just the next day were just, I thought they were happy the day before. And they were like, no, this is what happy looks like. So I was really impressed with that after like a day. So yeah, I'm pretty hooked. But I mean, again, I haven't got to harvest yet. And I don't have any results as far as that goes. But so far, just initial uses, I'm fucking happy with it. And I'll be ordering more. I went to the website and looked if I could get a bigger bottle. And you don't have a bigger bottle than a little.
I'm working on all that.
All right.
I'm definitely working on it. One of the things I have to do is figure out all the like better logistics.
Well, Brandon takes care of some business in the background.
Oh my goodness, my dog's an idiot.
Well, with that kind of wind up, what did he do?
Nothing. He won't stop harassing the damn cat. The cat's on the couch and he doesn't like it.
You're talking about bigger bottles of humate and humate, I think.
Yeah. So all of that stuff, it's
in Micro Plus.
Yeah, I know. It's just it's the reason why all the sizes are the way that they are is because I've strategically been able to like base my shipping and everything but based off of flat rate shipping costs and what I can actually fit inside of these packages. And so it's like it's not very efficient the way that I have to like do this, and I have to figure out a better way to be able to ship product because I ideally need to make it less expensive for my customers. And I need to be able to make it less expensive for myself. Because
like distribution system.
Yeah,
I could help you.
So you can move it by freight in a large amount. It's way cheaper.
Well, that's
most
not
people
an
are buying
issue.
just little.
That's the issue, right? I can do large quantities. Chubby, stop it. I can do large quantities and have the freight done on like, pallet, like a pallet. If you're going to buy like a 250 gallon tote, that's that's not a problem because you just have XPO Logistics come pick it up and then you have it shipped, and it's a flat rate for a pallet. And but when you're talking about like upsizing to like, you know, a 5-liter bottle, like there's no flat rate shipping box from the mail from the post office that can really fit.
You need to subcontract yourself through something like I used ShipStation for when I was sending my books out, and I could weigh it at home with like a USPS certified or whatever scale. And then I write the weight into this website with the person's address or whatever, and I can print out a label and I can just go drop it off at the post office and they'll ship it out for me in whatever
I have
package
that.
I use.
I have
So what
that.
Brandon's saying is he
No,
wants
I have
something that you
that.
can put in a flat rate box and save people money on shipping. He's
That's
like,
what
if
I'm
he goes
saying.
up in size, it's going to be a big increase in shipping.
That's what, because, okay, I have the flat rate and that is actually the cheapest because I have the ability to use all those other types of packaging methods, whether it's FedEx, UPS, and when it comes down to it, the flat rate is the cheapest. So I have to figure out some other method. Like I need to contact, you know, one of these shipping companies and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is my business. We're greatly increasing in sales and you guys can make money. We can make money together, but let's like figure this out. I don't know
The
how
fuck
it's
thing
done,
is,
really,
shipping right now is so expensive because it's hard to get truckers, trucking, and all that shit. Supply chains are all fucked up. And on top of that, like the service that I just mentioned, ShipStation, you get the rates that like the Fortune 500 companies are getting. Like I'm getting a much steeper discount than you would get if you just went to the post office and got a flat rate and sent something of equivalent size. So, and they charge you a few bucks a month to be part of like the service. And they are the then Fortune 500 company type person who pays the post office to get lower rates to, you know, they work within their systems and their codes so that everything's scanned and work a little easier so it can bring their costs down on the back end. But it's a interesting conundrum because like I've heard other people in the nutrient space, like Patrick from Green Bicycles has said it's almost easier if you're going to ship like a semi or a whole shipping container as far as cost go and like consistency than to ship just like small packages of things, like individually getting it to the places. The logistics for
that's
that.
why like distribution centers all over the place. That's why, you know, that's how Amazon does it.
Yeah, the last like mile or like 5 miles or whatever of delivery is like the most complicated for people to achieve. And a lot of the charge comes out of that. So like you're saying, Amazon has them everywhere so that they have centers nearby and they can get shit delivered quickly at a lower price for that reason. But it's definitely a logistical nightmare right now with shipping and supply chains, unfortunately, still for several reasons, pandemic related and, you know, international conflict and things like that. But those aren't as fun to talk about as cannabis.
I heard, I heard a little bit about this when I made that post a little while ago on my Instagram about peat and some of the like opinions that people had about peat. One of the most dark ones, even some people actually took umbrage with coco. They called it unsustainable as well, or worse in some cases. And I'm bringing it up on purpose. I'm curious if Dr. Coco has some impressions about that because I wasn't totally sure what they were talking about. Usually it's a waste product, I feel like, from coco coir. But yeah, like even if it's a sustainable thing where you don't have to destroy or you don't harvest, unsustainably, you're still like processing and sort of what's the word I'm looking for? You're still kind of like you're still having an ecological effect on that location, and you're changing those dynamics in ways that are kind of irreversible still. And I guess what it goes with that is also when you are trying to be sustainable with using peat or whatever, you can use it many times, but people are packaging it in plastic, and of course there's all the rigmarole of like getting it to the location that people want. And so a lot of people are like, well, if I use it locally, then it's a lot better, of course. And I grant that for sure. But just curious if people had impressions about that.
A lot of cocoa is sort of derived from other industries, but there's a lot of it now that's grown for the production of cocoa coir. So it's not just a waste product of other industries. Usually the coconut plantations are multi-product operations. So they're not just producing coir, they're producing coconut milk or water or meat or other things, other palm products along with that oil. But yeah, it is, if there are more and less sustainable methods of all sorts of agriculture, and palm plantations are no exception to that. So but it is a harvested commodity. Now, there's a few other sides to that. It requires some processing, and you can process the cocoa in more or less sort of sustainable ways. And it requires transportation from its point of origin, which may be further, certainly, than points of origin for peat, especially in sort of North America or Europe. Transportation costs, though, are less. It can be dehydrated and compressed smaller, and shipped pretty effectively. In fact, for shipping it's one of sort of the most effective media to be transported, because it can be completely dehydrated. But yeah, no, I think with any media, it goes beyond just sort of, if sustainability is your aim, it goes beyond sort of the simple headlines. You need to get into the details a little bit more, and understand where your stuff is sourced from. And cocoa can be reused too. And so making those kinds of decisions within your own operation to reduce the throughput is important.
Hey, Doc, do any operations farm coconut trees for their cocoa core?
Do any what?
Do any
He said that in the
yes
statement.
Yes, there are.
Oh, I missed part of it then. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, there are plantations that I think are primarily monetized, or sort of their main product is core.
The way to think about it, though, Tao, is it used to be, oh, this is a waste product, and they'll make a little money off it, and some gardeners will use this. It got so popular that they now have to cultivate.
Yeah, that's a
some
good
people
thing.
Well, they
are.
choose to. They choose to, because it's a more
Right.
profitable crop than other crops that those plantations could be growing.
And
That's a
exactly,
good
they
thing,
don't have
'cause they
access to sphagnum peat, where you can
We
grow.
grow it every year, and as it's growing, it's helping. Well, one could claim it helps the environment as it's growing, right? Yeah. So that's a
Well,
good thing that they have to.
It's not
farm
net.
it.
Technically, you could hope ideally that they're going to grow it perfectly, but like Dr. MJ alluded to, some of it, or a lot of it right now, is chemically treated, and that's how it's post-processed. And then there's it's coming from India,
Right.
so that's less sustainable to
There's
ship.
so many factors.
Even if you pack it into a brick, shipping something from India versus having something come from Canada, like North America to North America, there's less shipping impact. That takes gasoline, whether it's a tanker or a plane that's carrying it. So you really have to dig into the environmental impacts behind all this stuff, and you find out that there's no perfect media. I have looked for it. There's no perfect media. The best thing you can do is be as sustainably reusable as possible. Be the best yourself. If you're going to use cocoa, reuse it. If you're going to use peat, reuse it. That's
here's the thing, right? There's this aspect too. You have to think about this. If you do make a soil purchase, you can keep using that soil if you know how to. That soil can have a very long life.
Yeah, that's what I don't like about the single-use super soils. You know what I mean? That are designed essentially for one run of nutrition and then to be disposed of.
Those can be used into a super
soil testing.
I use the M3 for my run, and I've been using it for 2.5 years now. It was a single-use super soil that I got some amendments, and I re-amended it with some of Brandon's microbes and with some Build-A-Soil. The easiest way to do it possible, in my opinion, is to get a craft blend like Build-A-Soil, where you get all of the amendments that you would need to re-amend your soil, cook it back up with that and some worm castings, hit it with some microbes when you start over. Every single time I've done it so far, I've had great results. It's super simple and effective, and I don't know, I think
I can give
it's easy to overcomplicate.
A cheap home grow hack for anybody who wants to do a really super simple method of growing is if you can pretty much get any decent bagged soil. It's always going to be a little bit deficient in calcium, so you can always add like a tablespoon of gypsum per gallon of potted soil mix. And then if you get something like Biomin, they have a amino chelated micronutrient product, right? So it has all 5 micronutrients. It has zinc, copper, boron, iron, manganese, and copper. And it also has magnesium. So if you have good levels of calcium already in your soil and you use that maybe like twice throughout an entire cycle, and then you have and then you use that humate fertilizer, that is kind of a super solid way to go to, where it's really low maintenance and you're not really having to add a whole lot of inputs into your system.
I forgot that I do add the big 6 micronutrients plus humic acid mix from fill soil. And I also use gypsum.
And that's kind of like the same
addition.
thing. That's kind of like the same thing, because that big 6 with humic and fulvic acids, those are the micronutrients that we just talked about. And they're going to be mixed in with that humic fulvic acid. That's going to make them a little more available when they're in that soil solution. It's
funny because I've seen like a lot of different sources, whether it's Build a Soil or Clackamas Coot or Ted Hussey at Kiss Organics, like a lot of, and you with the Bokashi Earthworks, like a lot of the blends, we're all attacking like, similarly, whether it's coco or peat as the base, your X amount of aeration, and then all the amendments and micronutrients that you need. We have a pretty solid understanding of it. If you're running a certain circle, I guess you'll see a lot of similarities across a lot of the organic cultivators, which it makes sense. I think that there's lots of science that backs it up over the years, and people have found good results with it. So why not keep moving it forward with that, and then doing what you're doing on top of that with the soil samples and tissue testing to verify basically exactly what the plants need and when they need it. Yeah, so there's kind of like a fertilization chart that's kind of specific to cannabis, and it's been all tested and measured and data has been collected, and it works really well. There's certain things that you can do and micronutrients that you can increase at certain times to really, and it's kind of like when I was talking about front loading calcium and nitrogen and veg, having a really good abundance of manganese is going to help with a faster onset, as well as having I like to see really high potassium. Potassium, super, super important. It's just, it eats so much potassium, and it's also
and sulfur.
So yeah, you can go super, like that's one of the cool things about the mineral sulfates, right? Because you get the bioavailability from the mineral in a form that the plant utilizes.
Right.
And it also brings in that sulfate, and that sulfate is plant available also. And in this plant, it's really hard to overdo it on sulfur. Like you can cause in, like, if you have smaller plots or smaller plants, you can cause some osmotic stress, because it'll raise the ECE of the soil. It'll raise up the electrical conductivity, and that stress, the plant can have a hard time with that. But if you have just a good sized plant and you have a good volume of soil, you can really kind of push these things even in the soil systems. And that's kind of what I've been doing. I mean, my homeboy over at Organic Glaze has been like slowly progressing, and he's getting 2 pounds of light off of a 480 watt HLG, one of those old 550s. His rooms are like checkerboarded with those things, and so he's crushing it, and he's getting high 20s, low 30s, and between 3 and 4% terps on all the weeds. So
perfect. Yeah, I like that.
Dude, looking at those levels though, man, I see a lot of low micronutrient levels, and those things are really important, especially if you're like really feeding heavily. You got to make sure they have access to all that stuff.
What I really liked about that fucking that carbon-based fertilizer is that it's got micronutrients. I feel like I'm feeding micronutrients every time I use it.
It does. It has. So we're actually just got the labeling all finished up, and we're going to be doing our OMRI certification and all that other stuff. And one of the cool things is that it has small amounts of all of the micronutrients. It's mostly NPK, but it has all the other stuff. Some of them, I think like the K, the one for flowering, I don't think it has calcium in it, right? And I'll be able to actually formulate these things too, to increase those micronutrient levels, because there's 20% extra pure humate, pure carboxylic acid. And so what's happening is when that enters into the soil system, that's a water soluble form of carbon. And so it's available to biology, and it'll also help chelate the things that are already in your soil. So if you've added things that are in the soil solution, when it falls into solution, when you use that, it'll help grab onto that stuff too that's already there.
So it'd be nice to time it. So if you are top dressing anything, top dress before you're going to water in that humate.
Yeah.
And come back up with that. Nice.
Yeah. So that's actually one of the things that I tell my people, hey, you do your top dressing, and then in between your testing, after you've done your top dressing, you use that humate fertilizer. So and it helps keep things sufficient. And it's really just checking, because when you start to scale these systems and you're like on a larger scale, spending a couple $100 every other week isn't gonna, it's not gonna break the bank on your production side, to just know if I need to adjust anything. Usually we see things that are pretty sufficient, and we're just maybe doing slight adjustments with whatever it might be. But the biggest thing too is, proper environment. That VPD really, really is important.
Super important. Brandon, I had a question about phosphorus. I recently, and I think we even talked about a few episodes back, about peak phosphorus. I mentioned maybe even on another show about how I recently learned Morocco has something like 72% of the world's rock phosphate. And I know that you've talked about using like soft rock phosphates and things like that. And some people speculate, and as soon as like 100 years, that the world supply could be super low. And we're talking about environmental impact and like sustainability and supply chains and things like that. In the past, there's been wars fought over seabird guano, right? And that was a phosphorus for fertilizers and fertilizing purposes. And the soft rock phosphates are used for even like the big ag fertilizers. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that, and maybe anybody else on the panel.
Sure. So there are natural sources of really high phosphorus minerals, and those can be used in agriculture. There's also other types of rock mineral that contain high amounts of insoluble forms of phosphorus. And that's why they developed the use of sulfuric acid, is because what they can do is they're able to take these insoluble rock minerals that have really no use, and they're able to attack them, right, with the sulfite, and it breaks it down into phosphate, an plant available form, and then they end up separating that phosphate out, and that's how a lot of fertilizers are made. And the reason they do that is because most land on Earth is not arable. It can't really be used sufficiently for true agronomic purposes. That just doesn't have it doesn't naturally have the mineral and nutrient content that's sufficient for the high production ag crops to feed masses of people. You have to remember, we have 8.3 billion people on the planet, and growing and so these systems have been created to take things, and they use chemistry to make things available. Now the future is going to be different, because when we're looking at systems as a whole, we have to look at it holistically, like we do these soil systems and growing. how much energy does it cost to create these things? And then what is the use efficiency at the end? If it costs a large quantity of energy and then the use efficiency is really low, then it's really wasteful. If we can find ways to make the efficiency 100% and decrease the energy for production, then we could possibly have a carbon positive footprint. Because
so like as an example, to cut you off and I'll let you keep going, but like with nitrogen, I've seen like your amino N plus is like a way that you don't have to use like a chemical nitrogen fertilizer, which takes probably arguably a lot more energy to produce, and then it's not super efficient at being uptaken. So like when they spray it over fields, a lot of it's runoff water and it's not uptaken by the plants. A good amount of it is, but not all of it. So with that efficiency kind of example, what's the fix for phosphorus or phosphate? Is sulfuric acid efficient, or is there another way? Like, is there some organic? Do you have a product, I guess?
So there is, enzymatic process, which is going to be much slower and less efficient, right? That's the trade-off. So you can do it, but here's the thing. When we're talking about closing loops and we're talking about these soil systems, there's three main components that are extremely important, and it's going to be nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon. And those things are extremely contingent on natural weathering, like the weather cycles, the amount of water, precipitation. They're going to be contingent on organic matter percentage, because what happens is plants are taking carbon from the atmosphere and they'll deposit into the soil, right? But that soil is going to be utilized. It's going to be utilized and it's going to be converted. And so there's a cycle where it goes atmospheric nitrogen, usable nitrogen, things break down, releases carbon into the soil. Or sorry, I went from nitrogen to carbon, but they work the same way, right? Carbon, things break down, they take that carbon from the atmosphere, organic matter breaks down into the soil, releases that carbon. Attached in that carbon, like if it's leaf or something like that, you're going to find mostly nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Those are the three main elements that you're going to get in abundance from the breakdown and release of those things. However, things like nitrogen and phosphorus are cycled biologically, and they cycle and they're contingent on the organic matter. And what's organic matter? Organic matter is carbon, carbon in the soil, actual water, soluble carbon that can be used by biology and be used as transport catalysts. So that way, when these other organic things are broken down, the mineral content that's released can stay in a biologically available form for the plant, right? And when we're looking at phosphorus, the fixation, or the release from inorganic mineral sources into available phosphate, there's never any real free available phosphate. It's always attached to something unless it's being cycled immediately right there in the root zone. And it's because as soon as that phosphate molecule is released, it reacts with other things that are in the soil, like calcium and iron and zinc and manganese. And they can create substances that are available. So they do become available again through enzymatic processes when microbes release these microbes through secondary metabolism and they break them down and convert them, or when oxygen is less abundant, and things are reduced or things are oxidized. So there's all these different chemical things and biological processes that are constantly happening. And three of the most important parts of that are really contingent on the cycling of these things.
So what my mind just got out of that is you're saying that the whole debate between, veganism and carnivorism is silly, because we're all just carbon-based things eating carbon-based things, even plants.
When we're talking about nutrition, we talk about our bodies. When we talk about fertilization, we're talking about plants, but the same concepts apply, and that actually happens on a cellular level. So fertilization is occurring on a cellular level, and it's the conversion of these inorganic minerals or some of these low weight molecular compounds, depending on the situation and the pathways, blah, blah, blah. and how these things are used, right? And how the cells are uptaking these things and making, organic chemicals out of them.
Yeah, it's crazy how
Constructing,
similar it is. The more I learn about it, the more similar it is. The way our body breaks down food for the minerals to build the building blocks of our bodies, the plants are doing the same fucking thing.
They have different functions, different, we have different ways. That's why we have to have proteins that plants produce. We can't produce a lot of we're not photosynthetic, so our bodies don't produce naturally like the sugars. They do it through the energy that we give it, through the proteins and the carbohydrates, and then they'll manufacture, break down all that stuff, and then they feed our cells that way. Plants, what they're doing is they're actually taking these inorganic compounds from the environment around them, and they're taking CO2 from the atmosphere and then water, and they're using the minerals to make enzymes to break down the carbon dioxide. Photosynthesis breaks down the water, and then the oxygen, the hydrogen, the carbon reacts when they have a certain amount to make glucose, and that glucose is like the energy that feeds all of the cells in these systems. So the whole thing the plant is doing is making organic compounds from inorganic substances and some organic substances that are produced by like microbes, things like phytohormones and low weight organic acids like amino acids, for instance, and some other things that are attached to carboxyl or hydroxyl groups, stuff like that.
So I asked about if you had a product, but I recalled a product, and I wasn't sure if it was phosphorus because I always mess up like the NPK. Like I know K is potassium, but it's a P word. But then I was like, is P phosphorus or is it another P?
You should just start calling it Kalium. That's what it used to be called.
That'd make things easier, maybe. But Mammoth P, the reason I brought that up was I mentioned this a long time ago on a different show, but it's a phosphorus liberator is how they market it. And it's like I believe it's a microbial consortium that is specifically directed at creating phosphorus availability within soils.
Yes.
And I wasn't sure which microbe it is and if you have access to that or if there's other competition. Because I do know it's a little on the pricey side, but if you're lacking phosphorus and like if you're doing more agronomic or even if you just wanted to keep costs low and things like that, and you have some phosphorus available in your soil that's to be unlocked, it's an option, I guess.
Okay, so I'll give you...
I have a question for Dr. Coco, if that's okay. It's sort of related to what you're talking about, or what we were generally talking about with nutrients. And I think that with your background, you might know more about this than me. But I've read that in the ancient Roman times, and I guess this is pretty well understood, but Egypt and Rome for a time were very closely associated. And I guess parts of Egypt, or at least ancient Egypt, were kind of a breadbasket for Rome. And that I guess that the constant production of crops there and then transportation therein to other places like ancient Rome had a desertification effect. Is that true?
Yeah, over farming in the Nile River Delta and in the Mesopotamia region led to like desertification, salt buildup. It's a phenomenon that happens when you irrigate soils that have a lot of dissolved salts. The salts will sort of migrate their way up to the surface and lead to a salinification problem at the surface that renders the fields unusable.
Oh, so it's not really so much, or maybe, I don't know, this is sort of similar, or I guess related, because I was told this in the context of like, basically, and I guess there were some people on my posts about peat that were kind of making this point as well, which I thought was fascinating because I knew some of this, but I guess like with strawberries being produced in Egypt, for example, and how like, I guess, agricultural intensification has sort of intensified that desertification because maybe nutrients, and that's where I'm getting that sort of segue from, are basically being exported, right? Because of all the compounds that are being made to make the plant matter and the fruit, right. And then that gets transported out. So like really...
They're leaving the system.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the issues with the more devastating effect is more recent along the Nile, and that's the Aswan High Dam that stopped the periodic flooding. The Nile used to have an annual flood that would, wash over the banks, dump a bunch of new sediment that would be both then, irrigated and fertilized essentially. Stop building that dam prevented the annual floods and prevents that new deposit of sediment along the banks. So when the system sort of changes like that, then you have to switch to other forms of fertilization to continue to farm there, and you start supplementing with chemical-based fertilizers.
I feel like it's that need for supplementation and that exportation of literally natural resources. Like, I mean, of course, I probably sound very rich to some people in the world right now because of where I am and how I'm saying this, but I felt like that was kind of the most critical takeaway point from kind of what Brandon was saying and what we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes or so. I mean, that's very tragic. And
yeah, I mean,
I want to just jump in.
Cases of that. I think
Sorry, Mike. I don't
before
mean
we
to
finish up, I want to give Spartan a chance to give his final thoughts and shout out, because he does have to get going over to Michigan Bros Grow Show here pretty soon, starting at 6 o'clock, 15 minutes from now, 14 minutes.
Yeah, appreciate that, Jack. Thanks, guys. Thanks, panel. Thanks. It was awesome hanging out today. This is one of those ones where we didn't need to have any questions from chat. It was a nice conversation that went the whole 2 hours. I love those ones. So thank you. Cheers for that. And cheers, chat. It was going too fast for me today. I think maybe it was the edible, but I couldn't keep up with chat very well today. So sorry about that if I missed something, guys. But I tried to respond. Some people, here's my pet peeve, Spartan's pet peeve for the day. If you want my attention, you have to tag me. My name on there is Spartan Grown.
Yes.
A lot of people just do it at Spartan. I'm sorry that I put Spartan Grown, and it makes it harder for you guys. But I won't see it if it just says at Spartan. I do see it sometimes, but it doesn't put that red box around it unless you say Spartan Grown. So I'll try to get better, guys.
No, that's okay. It's very hard. I had the same problem, and I chose a really complicated name that's not intuitive, and people will spell it wrong, which is totally valid. And I won't see their comments either. I get it.
Yep. All right. Cheers, guys. And I'll be over at the Michigan Bros Grow Show. We don't have a guest tonight, but we'll probably just who knows what the hell we'll do. It's crazy.
Sometimes those are the best nights, just hanging with the crew. So cheers to Michigan Bros Grow Show, and thank you, Spartan, as always, for coming on.
Take care, buddy.
Yeah.
Peace out, Spartan. Yeah, Spartan's going to be there. That's good enough to go show up.
Absolutely. But we were kind of Matthew and
all right, I didn't mean to invoke the
no,
sadness.
it's fine. I think it was an interesting conversation. It was related to what we were talking about, and it also reminded me of, I guess, like they used to say, I think the Romans did it. They would like salt people's fields, and salting the fields made it so that they couldn't immediately grow crops, or they'd have difficulties growing crops thereafter. So it is reminiscent of even like the chemical fertilizers being, or whatever fertilizer. It could be a deposit of sediment that's just too strong to make it. I think like the southeast of the US has like the red clay, and that red clay is hard to grow in without, like Brandon was talking about, it's not like agronomically ready. It's not going to go produce you X amount of bushels of corn versus like somebody who's got a whole field that's pumping X amount of fertilizer into it, or somebody who's been doing like hugel culture beds for the last 6 years and their soil's rich and living and they're able to get good production out of it versus a true like native untouched soil.
That's honestly the best way to get phosphorus back into the system, is to utilize all the stuff that you have native. That's why all the breakdown of all that organic mulch and all those things in those beds, that is going to have, it's not going to have a massive amount of phosphorus, but it's going to be biologically active, and it's going to be able to cycle phosphorus out of that organic material. Because again, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur are going to be the main 3 components that are going to be released through that, as well as carbon through the breakdown of those materials.
Now, is that similar for like most trees and other plants, like flowers and barks and things like that?
Yes.
So those are like the big 3/4, I guess, things that are dropped when it comes to
carbon. Is usually the largest component, because if you think about what everything's made out of, it's going to be carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and then nitrogen. That's a protein, and they're going to build those proteins. So huge part of that is, a large percentage of that dry weight is carbon. the majority is.
That's why I think like looking back, it was sort of foolish that I would blow the leaves off of my lawn in Ohio during the fall when I could just let them basically decompose and fertilize the lawn, and then we wouldn't have to pay to fertilize it. And I think that like nature has its way, like even like fruit drop theory, where like the fruit that drop around the trees can even be broken down to help fertilize over the coming seasons and things like that.
What if you just, instead of like raking up your leaves, you just take your lawnmower and just mulch them all up?
with no bag on the back,
Yeah,
just
with no bag,
leave them
yeah.
where they lie.
Yeah.
Spartan, I think, does that. He may have mentioned, and any extra stuff that he has, he'll in the pile, like that's in additional areas where he needs to like get it off of like the city property or something like that. He uses like, I think he even goes for like black leaf mold because it has good certain microbes in there that are good for breaking stuff down, if I remember correctly. But even just for like the mulch, like the green and the brown mulch, like having leaves versus like green grass and mixing them together. There's lots of things that you could do with natural inputs around you. Like you were talking about closing the loops. I know that there are a lot of people out here in California that are attempting to do that. And part of that is growing not just cannabis, but other food crops in their area, and then using the compost and recycling that material and putting it back into your garden bed and things like that. So it's certainly possible.
I was told that there's going to be a new law going into effect in California where you're not allowed to throw away organic waste, or you're going to have a new bin, and you're going to have to pay to have your organic waste disposed of. And so bokashi composting, I think, will be a way that people can kind of mitigate the organic wasting, and then they can just use that for gardening, putting it in their backyard. Or
yeah, if we don't compost our own stuff now, we're supposed to put it in with our green waste.
I think it's smart for the environment as a whole. I think countries, even outside the US, that have implemented similar things have found success. And like, even if you have like a local community garden, like I can't remember, I think the TV show is called Schitt's Creek, and one of the guys in the show walks around with like a backpack with a garbage bag inside of it, and he collects all the people's like rotten apple cores and all this shit. But he then goes and composts it and grows local food for them. And I think that creating real systems like that in your own communities, or finding somebody who can, is a great way to minimize your impact.
There's a place out here in Oklahoma called Fertile Ground. They do that. They've set up these composting bins where they put all their organic waste from like restaurants and stuff, and then they have like a trash pickup type service, and they go around and they pick up all of the compost stuff, and then they have a composting facility where they all compost it together.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. And with that being said, I can't believe it's been 3 years. This has been a wild ride, and I've enjoyed every single week of it, whether we made it live or not. We've always been here every week, and we even did a few of them 2 times a week. So cheers to us for all the dedication for everybody here on the panel, and for all the listeners who's been here since day one or whenever you joined. We appreciate you so much. I have a great time doing this every week. I learn a lot. And I think that if anything, like looking forward, we kind of always harken back. I know we talk shit about like NFTs and partying and random shit for a while. I'm sorry for going off topic. I saw people in the chat and even on the panel trying to get us back on topic, and we inevitably do, and most of the time always do. So sorry for straying, but in the future we're going to keep on, trying to teach people how to grow cost effectively, both in organics or synthetic, whatever suits your fancy. We talked a lot about the reasons why both can actually be might be the least impact as far as carbon footprint goes, depending on where you are and how you prefer to cultivate. So we're all friendly for everybody. Both synthetic and organic is all welcome here. And I know so often the community can get divisive about this versus that, LED versus CMH, or HPS, and salts versus organics, whatever. But I think we do a great job of representing both sides here as much as we can, and trying to further everyone's knowledge and do it most cost effectively. So that's our mission: overgrow the world, keep growing. And with that said, I'm going to pass it first to Dr. MJ.
Hey, Jack, thank you. Yes, I am Dr. MJ Coco. It was an interesting sort of broadly ranging show today. I got a few things I'll let people know about as we're dropping out. I did a new show that just dropped today on the Photosyntech YouTube channel, Meet the Grower, with yours truly. So you guys can check that out. It was an interesting show. He's a cool guy, Matt, over on the Photosyntech channel. We have the Grower Love giveaway going on right now. all you have to do is stop by the deals and discounts page, register for that. The prize is a chilled GrowCraft Ultra X3. It's a beautiful grow light, and it's on the drawing is on 3/20. So we still got 2 weeks until that to get registered for that. Even if you registered before, there's like new bonus actions, and we're getting all geared up for the Spring Autoflower Challenge, which starts on 4/20. So start thinking about getting your grow calendars lined up for that. We've got a cool new prize sponsor. Agobe is going to be sponsoring the SFAC and giving away like rosin presses and trim trays and grow lights and all sorts of fun stuff. So be sure to sign up for that. And yeah, I'll be back here next week. I am Dr. MJ Coco. Grower love, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us, and always a great sign off there, and appreciate that you're able to put your story out there on different platforms so people can go check that out, and also continue to do your thing on your platform and this one. We appreciate your support so much. You were on one of I think the second episode of the show before it became like a full-blown panel by episode 3 or 4. So you've been here as long as everybody else, and it's been a great run. So we appreciate your time and all of your knowledge that you share with the community. So thank you again, Doctor. And next up, we got Brandon Rust.
What's going on, guys? Thanks again. I also appreciate being here. Time has gone by pretty quick. I am really happy where I'm at, and I'm glad to be able to continue to be part of the panel and share as I learn and as we go. And yeah, it's been a great learning experience for me, and I hope that I've been able to help other people along the way as well. So again, you can find me at on Instagram at rust.brandon, and also bokashiearthworks.com. On the internet, you can find my website, and there's all kinds of cool stuff, microbes amendments, carbon-based fertilizer. And I'll talk to you guys all next week.
Thanks so much for joining, Brandon. I know you've helped many, many people for sure. One of my family members I tried to get into growing is no longer able to grow, but is still a fan of yours. Just following some of your content, he got really inspired by like your hustle and all the stuff you were sharing for free, and used one of your soil mixes and had great success with it. So I know that's at least one person, and I've used a lot of your products and had success with it, and learned a lot from your information that you shared on the show as well. So thank you again so much for being with us for all these years and sharing all the information and making this time on your Sunday to join us each week. So thank you. And next up, we've got Kyle.
Thanks, Jack. Happy anniversary, everybody. I'm still trying to remember how it all began. I think Shane knew Eric, and I think that's how because I met Eric from Green Goddess at the Harvest Cup in Worcester, and then he was friends with Shane, and then Shane reached out to me, and yeah, so I'm just glad we're still doing this. Definitely doesn't seem like 3 years by any means. I got some things going on. I actually got a job offer at a facility down here. I'm not sure where that's going to go, but that's an interesting one. But yeah, I got some collaboration with Mr. Soul happening soon, so that's really exciting. I have an autoflowers that I put on my website last night. So if there's any autoflower growers out there, there's access to them. And the Ace of Spades collaboration that me and Noam did turned out like absolutely beautiful, man. Me nor Dan knew the pink pistols were going to get unlocked in that cross. So it's really, really nicely statured plants. And my side, the Syndica, carried these wicked, extreme, greasy cotton candy terpene profiles, and it came through in the progeny. So that's just really, so if anyone's looking for that kind of stuff, that's on my website. PayPal shut me down. I still have Venmo. I'm working on some other things too, so excuse the processing issues there. It's an ongoing battle for a lot of us, but there's some solutions happening.
Check out the Cash App.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's one too. We're getting there though. Ironically, man, I don't know if anyone knows. So I actually found an actual bank that will actually let me bank with them and let me use actual debit and credit cards, but there's a fee with that, and that fee is something I don't really quite feel like paying. Yeah, it's heavy, and who knows? Yeah, whatever. But so trying to figure it out. But yeah, so that I got a new seed drop happening in 8 weeks. I got a collaboration with Brandon going on that I'm really excited about too, because me and him have been trying to do something for a while. But yeah, so purebreeding.com, pure_breeding on Instagram, pure breeding on Facebook. And, anybody that wants to reach out, please feel free to reach out. And if you're listening and you don't have social media, because you don't do that, pure breeding, the letter M and the letter A, abbreviation for Massachusetts, at gmail.com. You can find me there, and I'm everywhere. So just thanks, guys. I'm really happy we're all doing this. I'm glad we're all safe. Glad we survived the pandemic, and hopefully we survive what's coming up with who knows what's going on in this world type stuff. And I'll see you guys all soon, man.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kyle. And next up, Matthew Gates.
I'm supposed to say something more salient than this on the 3-year anniversary, but I just wanted to say that I honestly appreciate the relationships that I've made, the interactions that I've had, positive and also in some cases stressed or somewhat negative, have all been enriching for me and have allowed me to grow as a professional and also personally. So it's been an enjoyable experience, and I'm looking forward to more of that. And if you want to find more of my own content, you can find it on Zenthanol at YouTube. I will be with Chad Westport on the Future Cannabis Project 02 channel, talking about Western flower, thrips, and cannabis on Tuesday. So you can check me out there, live stream. I'll have a presentation there for that. You can also find me on my Instagram at SyncAngel and at SyncAngel on Twitter.
Always happy to have you. And I know without you, we would definitely not have gotten as much IPM knowledge to the community and to myself. I know it's very valuable, as much as people, I love that we kind of like weave it into a grow conversation, because otherwise maybe some people would never go over to your page because they just want to avoid all things IPM. But then once they get introduced here, they'll probably be like, wow, he's really informed and this can actually save my ass. So they'll go and check it out and appreciate that kind of knowledge. And even the quick stuff that they take on each show that you've been on is probably enough to save many people's gardens, or at least get them on the right path to doing more crop scouting and having more options of how they can approach certain pests and molds, milders, etc. So we appreciate your input and all the work that you're doing, not only here, but all over the internet. So thank you so much. And last, and certainly not least, Tao, the American one, the faceless man who always joins us with great insight.
First, let me say, Jack, thanks for your competence and the hosting skills, and continually to perform week after week. It's appreciated by me anyway. And everyone on the panel, I just feel lucky that we have so many smart, intuitive, curious, in all different aspects of the cannabis cultivation, and get all these opinions is like priceless. It really is. And shout out to Chat coming around and hanging out with us every week. It's always good. And I guess that's about it. I'm the American one, and most of you know where to find me. So peace out, everyone. Let's do another 3. And eventually the whole United States will be able to, like, every state will be able to come on and show their stuff without fear. Let's knock on wood for that to happen.
That's the goal. Hey, hopefully we'll make bigger strides this upcoming year. And in the future, maybe we'll do a cheap home grow cup / meetup in every state. That'd be fun. Just like everybody can have their own little local. We could come and bring the show to you. Maybe do a live event where all of us get up on a stage and do the cheap home grow together. Yeah. And you could actually see Tao in person then. The man, the myth, the legend. But it's been a great 3 years. I'm looking forward to the next 3 for sure. We're no signs of stopping. I love this. I like the American one, and many others have said, getting all the different points of view and content out there. It's something I really enjoy, and I'm learning more every week. I also want to shout out Chad Westport in chat. I know Matthew mentioned him about the FCP 02. I was on there with him as well. He's a great dude, great member of the community. There's so many. I can't even begin to start listening on because there's over 100, and it would extend the show way further into Michigan Bros Grow Show than I would like to. We've already cut 4 minutes into their show, which I don't like to go extra, but this is a 3-year anniversary, so I wanted to give everybody a little bit of extra love and say thank you to the American one who sent me his Amy Aces. I grew them out, and I'm still smoking on some of it. It's great to have homegrown that was bred by your friends and grown by yourself with lots of love and care, and get some good results and get to share them with the community and compare now that I'm seeing so many people grow it literally internationally and all over the states. So Tao, thank you again for joining us these past few years. It's been great. I always appreciate your input, and everybody on the panel who's here this week. Shout out to ATG Acres and Noah the Grower who are not with us, and shout out to all the prior panel members like we mentioned earlier, Green Goddess, and so many great ones that people ask about, like Shane and Can Grow. They're doing well and Chef OMJ was here with us like last week. We've got a lot of past great panelists as well, and from all the recent check-ins I've done with, they haven't been super recent, but the latest check-ins I've done with all those people, they're all alive and well. And so anybody out there's wondering, I've seen comments in some of the shows like, hey, whatever happened to so-and-so? So they're just busy with their personal lives and things like that. When they have time for the show, if they feel like they're able to, they'll come on back. But until then, you've got us and the regulars in chat, and we all appreciate you and we appreciate each other. It's a good place to be because there's a lot of rough shit out there, and we try to keep it focused on the grow and the good side of the community and content. So we're going to keep on doing that moving forward. This is Jack Greenstock, signing out. Peace and love, y'all.
Grow